I'll be back.
Terminator wasn't just about a cyborg looking to destroy Sarah Connor. It was an action fest, with high-speed car chases, futuristic technologies, and an actor who became a national hero. Here's what Arnold Schwarzenegger revealed about the Terminator that fans never figured out.
I actually went to set to see him.
You never told me that story.
I know. Told everybody else.
And as a bonus, I'll reveal how a toy truck almost spoiled the entire movie. So, sit back and let's rewind time. Number 1. Before Arnie immortalized the role of T-800, and before OJ found himself in hot water with the law, rumors were circulating around who James Cameron would cast as the Terminator. Many names were thrown around, but one of the most unlikely people was also thrown in the mix. Yet, being an unknown director at the time, Cameron listened to the studio for some ideas, when one exec proposed O.J. Simpson as a possible option. According to Cameron, this was immediately rejected, even though Cameron himself had to think about the idea. He said O.J. wasn't believable as a killer. This was when everybody loved him, and ironically, that was part of the problem. He was this likable, goofy, kind of innocent guy. Quite ironic, considering what happened just a decade later. But you wouldn't guess how James Cameron became the director. Number 2. Back in the 1980s, James Cameron only had one movie, Piranha 2: The Spawning, credited to his name. Yet, when he showed up with the script for The Terminator while living in his car, his agent absolutely hated it. So, Cameron fired him. And instead of selling the script to the highest bidder, he simply turned to Gail Ann Hurd. He sold the script for a measly $1 bill. But this wasn't the only stipulation. In the contract, Cameron stipulated that he was the one to direct the film, something that made a lot of people raise their eyebrows at the idea. Then he created a masterpiece, and followed it up with an even better sequel. But getting to the idea of the Terminator wasn't what you'd expect. Number 3. Unlike many Hollywood scripts with special writers and a lot of creative work, the Terminator came from the most unlikely of places. Whilst in Rome filming Piranha 2, Cameron was suffering from a few nightmares. Perhaps this was all tied to the horror movie he was filming at the time. But as the saying goes, sometimes nightmares can be assets. According to Cameron, he had a fever dream of a metal death figure coming out of a fire. He'd further mold the idea and create the classic Terminator movie we have come to love today. Unfortunately, not everyone believed it was a novel idea. Number 4. When the movie was first released, Harlan Ellison wasn't truly on board that Cameron came up with the idea by himself. He immediately filed papers to sue Cameron and the studio, claiming it was stolen from an episode of The Outer Limits he wrote in 1964. Cameron rejected the idea, standing firm that he was the one who came up with the idea, and that Ellison was just jealous that his production never got off the ground and faced a myriad of problems. It was even more frustrating that the two had to go to court, with the possibility that the studio would wipe out all the profits if the decision did not go in their favor. Fortunately, the two didn't need to go to trial. They settled outside of court for an undisclosed amount. But Cameron didn't hold back his comments after the deal was signed, saying that Ellison was a parasite who can kiss my ass. But even with these harsh words, you won't believe what the studio had in mind for Kyle Reese in an attempt to bring more dimension to his character. Number 5. Even though Kyle Reese is the main protagonist, one will forever remember the film for the iconic performance of Arnold Schwarzenegger. However, filming wasn't without its problems, with both Orion Pictures and the main financier, Hemdale, all having opinions of their own. In true James Cameron spirit, he flipped off Hemdale, but was a little more open to suggestions made by Orion. One such suggestion was that Reese have a canine companion, which was a cyborg also sent back from the future. This would have been an excellent idea, but it required a lot of technology and special effects, which were quite tough to do on a minuscule $6.5 million budget. Sadly, the canine companion idea was scrapped. It would have been fascinating to see a cyborg dog with some kind of superpower, perhaps giving Reese an even better shot at taking down the Terminator. Speaking of Reese, guess who should have played him? Number 6. We all know Michael Connell Bean for being Kyle Reese, but when James Cameron first pitched the idea of Reese, he had someone else in mind. He invited Arnold out for dinner, who he had proposed the idea to. Instead of being T-800, Arnold's recent success as a protagonist meant that Cameron wanted him to continue fulfilling this kind of role and become Kyle Reese. But instead of talking about Reese, Arnold continued giving his opinion on the antagonist and how he suggested T-800 should be portrayed. He even made suggestions about how the antagonist should act and where he saw the story going. So, Cameron immediately got the idea to cast Arnold as the Terminator. But this wasn't exactly what Arnold had expected. He recently played the hero, the protagonist, and the man fans cheered for in the hit classic Conan the Barbarian. Arnie felt that being the bad guy wasn't good for his image, and he didn't want to be the one to be seen as a bad guy by the American public. So Cameron explained that he was mostly being a robot, and that his passion for the character would elevate him as a star in Hollywood. Arnold eventually agreed to the idea, but then another moment of extreme awkwardness erupted when Cameron realized he had forgotten his wallet at home. Arnie agreed to pay for the dinner. So, Cameron had to figure out who was going to play Reese. Number 7. The legendary singer Sting was thumping away, entertaining crowds with the police all over the world. He had a packed schedule, but instead of creating the music for the film, James Cameron had something else in mind. The studio already had numerous actors on its radar, including Matt Dillon, Kurt Russell, Tommy Lee Jones, Mickey Rourke, Michael O'Keefe, Scott Glenn, Treat Williams, Christopher Reeve, and Mel Gibson, but none of them truly blew Cameron away. So, he turned his attention to Sting, offering the singer a whopping $350,000 to play the role. But this didn't really appeal to the singer, who already had a packed touring schedule. According to Sting, Cameron's first film, Piranha, was bad, and he feared that creating another bad film with a science fiction style wouldn't be good for his image, while costing him a lot of money from his fully booked tour schedule. So, Cameron turned to Michael Biehn. But on the first audition, his southern accent was just a little off-putting to the director, and he was ready to scrap the actor. Yet, Biehn quickly changed it, and Cameron loved what he brought to the table. Number 8. One of the most iconic lines in the film is undoubtedly Arnold saying his famous line,
"I'll be back."
However, the actor didn't feel comfortable with the word "I'll," believing that his accent made it uncomfortable and that it wouldn't be delivered correctly. Arnold wanted the line to be changed to "I will be back." Cameron snapped at Arnold, saying, "Don't tell me how to write, I don't tell you how to act." The two went back and forth with a little banter, but it was Cameron who finally emerged on top, convincing Arnold that it wouldn't sound bad. They then filmed the take 10 times until they found the best-sounding version. Yet, in the original Sean Huston's novelization of the film script, the line was supposed to be, "I'll come back." Number 9. Now, technically, T-800 speaks a lot more, but much of it was dubbed from a cop speaking to Sarah Connor's mother's voice. But since Arnold wasn't truly comfortable speaking English, his lines were significantly reduced, and he only spoke 17 sentences throughout the movie. With Arnold struggling to speak English with his strong Eastern European accent, the decision was made to cut most of it and just focus on those 17 lines. If you look at each individual word, Arnie transformed T-800 into one of the most iconic characters by speaking just 58 words throughout the whole movie. This just proves how impactful Arnie really was, the true definition of having your actions speak louder than words. But another problem popped up before filming when one of the main actors was seriously injured. Number 10. Just before filming, Linda Hamilton, the actress who played Sarah Connor, broke her ankle. Since she spent a large part of the film running from T-800, it proved a big problem during initial filming. So, Cameron came up with an idea. He rewrote parts of the script to show that Connor had an old figure skating injury, which required surgical pins in her tibia, which was why he cut her legs open. The scene was removed from the final cut, and they'd leave the running scenes till to be shot at the tail end of production. Perhaps this would have been a nice Easter egg. Number 11. One of the most iconic parts of the film is how T-800 handles his firearms when shooting. His robotic nature, never blinking, and accuracy made him seem like one with the role. But this didn't come naturally, and Arnold was never truly a big fan of guns. He'd spend months of training with real firearms and special military advisors, teaching him how to reload the gun and move in such a robotic way. In fact, he never really flinches, while his blinking seems fully controlled. But as imposing of a figure as Arnold is, it took some time for him to master this, with numerous takes having to be shot in order for him to master the true robotic nature of T-800. It would have been funny to have such an imposing force, with supposedly no emotions, acting like a puny human being. Arnold truly revolutionized the role thanks to this extra bit of training. Number 12. At the start of the movie, Terminator can be seen driving over a small truck. Yet, this truck would not be forgotten, but it was easily missed by many watching the film. Cameron and the crew foreshadowed the whole toy truck incident to what would happen at the end of the film. When T-800 was run over by the exact same model of truck he ran over. This didn't change much in terms of the movie, but it is an often overlooked Easter egg. Number 13. One afternoon after filming wrapped up, the public was treated as something a little different, or perhaps petrifying, depending on who you ask. As was custom, Arnold headed out for lunch often during breaks or when filming was done for the day. Yet, near the end of the film, the actor actually forgot he was still wearing his makeup. Arnold still headed out for lunch, with one eye missing, his iron jawbone fully exposed, and some burnt flesh that kept him in character. Imagine being the one who works or even eats at a restaurant, and some robot-like person with burnt flesh enters looking to eat. It is surprising that no one called the cops or began running away out of fear. Perhaps he would have turned around telling the servers, "I'll be back." No one knows whether Arnie remained in character, but this certainly would have been something to behold. Perhaps many people thought real aliens were invading. Number 14. Despite the revolver carried by Reese, it looks random when he uses it following the police scene. If you watched the film for the first time, you might be wondering how he magically got the gun, or if he had been hiding it all this time. Yet, this was never just a random revolver. In fact, it belonged to Lieutenant Traxler, but the scene where he gave Reese the revolver was actually cut from the final production. It was later revealed that as they stormed out of the police station, they found an injured Traxler, who believed their story and then handed him the revolver to protect Sarah. He later handed it to her in the motel, but it was very handy when they finally needed it. Number 15. One of the original ideas was to have two Terminators play in the movie. The first was an off-course T-800, but Cameron wanted a second Terminator made of liquid metal with the ability to shapeshift. Yet, the technology available in 1984 made it almost impossible, and special effects were not yet ready for the idea to become a reality. CGI was still in an infant stage, with its limits being already pushed significantly by the 3 Star Wars films made a few years earlier. After testing and trying, it was simply impossible for the studio to be able to pull this off. But when a completely computer-generated special effect proved to be a success in Cameron's The Abyss a few years later, he once again revived the idea of this, which would be a central theme for Terminator 2. Perhaps this is why a lot of the Terminator 2 storyline had some connection to the first. Number 16. One of the biggest questions was how old Sarah Connor was during the timeline of Terminator 1. It was a highly contested topic, which later revealed that she was just 19. In Terminator 2, when Dr. Silberman says Sarah is 29 years old, T-1000 checks the profile of Sarah's son John, which then reveals that he was 10 years old. Quite a young age for someone to be terrorized by such an enormous entity. But her fate would be confusing in later films, dying in Terminator 3, but still being alive in another timeline, starring in the Sarah Connor Chronicles and Terminator: The Dark Fate. Let me know in the comments if you believe Sarah Connor should have been revived. Number 17. When T-800 came to 1984 for the first time, the idea was to have him figure things out. Since he was from the future, Cameron believed he didn't have any knowledge of things in the past, so a comical scene was intended, but was later cut. Seeing a woman put a car in reverse and drive into a trash can, Cameron wrote that T-800 would also do the same. Yet the feeling of comedy wouldn't really resonate with the theme of the film, and it was later cut from the final production. Perhaps this scene would have added a little more humor to the start, but it could have gone horribly wrong, perhaps even leading to Arnold being charged if a police officer had been around. At least Cameron got the shot he desired, and this would ultimately be a key moment. Number 18. One of the big problems with the bridge scene was that there were a lot of flies. In fact, the crew called it a fly scare with bugs all over the place. So, to film the scene, the crew used bug spray to get rid of the flies, and they were supposed to wait until the spray dissipated before filming. But Cameron thought it added a lot of character to the scene, giving it a foggy feeling that made it even more unique. So, in the middle of the bug spray, the crew started filming, And as it turned out, it was a stroke of genius, adding something extra to the film. Unfortunately, the scene was paused at some point to give everyone the opportunity to get used to the bug spray, with many people coughing as they didn't really expect it. So, even filming Terminator proved to be a little bit of a safety hazard. Number 19. In one of the most iconic scenes, Arnie is seen walking up to a car and punching the window. Yet doing this was considered illegal in California, and they needed a permit to do so. But Cameron didn't have any money left, already paying for the car and the scene himself. Arnold later remarked that Cameron pulled up to the car and told him to go out and just punch the window because he needed the shot. Fortunately, the crew didn't get in any trouble, but it was kind of crazy given the small budget that they resorted to doing this. The part where Arnold looks around to see if anyone is watching is also real, perhaps looking for any cops. Number 20. Terminator became an all-time classic, and it was shown all around the world. Yet when they showed it in Poland, there was a serious problem. The word Terminator actually means artisan apprentice in the country, which would have been completely different from the American meaning, which means killer. So, the name was changed to Elektroniczny Morderca, or electronic murderer, to help the Polish audience understand the meaning of the film. This wasn't done for the sequels, as pirated copies meant that everyone in the world was aware of its meaning by the time the sequel was released. But Terminator had nothing on the classic that came just a year later. A Steven Spielberg miracle, filled with drama and even a main actor doing double duty in Back to the Future. Check out this video to find out why.